Welcome to Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast. Not a podcast, the podcast. Where we discuss everything from hauntings and murders to the evil underbelly of Tinseltown. Our hosts today are Patrick, Dean, that's me, and Tia. I think Tia is laughing at me, that's Tia. And Jameson.
They're all gonna laugh at you!
Never mind, Adam Sandler is a guest host today.
What's up, everybody?
What's up, man? How are you?
He was doing Carrie, if you were...
Yeah, thank you. I was doing Carrie, not Adam Sandler.
I know,
However,
but you
right?
did sound like Adam Sandler doing that.
God.
and he does
both,
do
so
that, I remember.
Sounds like a horrible movie. Adam Sandler as Carrie.
As Carrie? I thought he was going to be like the mom, at least, or something.
Oh, my God.
No, I'm doing well, man. It sounds, or it looks like there's going to be a thunderstorm like right over my head here, so I'm excited to see if there's any lightning or anything as I tell my story, but we'll see.
I was about to say, yeah, that's the background noise that we're okay with.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Not my grumbling stomach.
Yeah, fuck that, yeah. And don't be trying to blame it the other way.
Your stomach, right?
It was thunder, I swear to God!
That was definitely a fart, Jameson.
I love it.
So yeah, I'm actually very excited about this one today. And I believe I'm going last. Who's going first?
Jameson's going
I'll go
first.
first.
Okay, all right. You guys
I'll go
wanna roll
first.
dice
And I believe last week you gave me the subject of one Miss Marilyn Monroe.
Ooh.
The sexy and beautiful and talented Marilyn Monroe. Oh, by the way, I just realized I have to go upstairs and dig around my dad's attic. I realized that as I was doing my research here that she was in the first issue of Playboy.
Yeah.
And I was down in Florida one time and looking through an antique store, and somebody had a framed picture of her from that Playboy issue, and I bought it for my dad, and he's said he will bequeath it to me.
Ooh.
That's awesome.
So
That's cool.
I'll have to send you a shot of it. It's really cool. It's very vintage looking, very sexy. She's totally naked in it, and it's hot. But it's all worn and beat up, so it's got that vintage look. So it's pretty awesome.
Nice. That's fucking cool.
And I did not realize that it was the first issue of Playboy that she was in. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
as well.
that's a trip.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the people that
remember-
get naked on your first issue, I think Marilyn Monroe is definitely top 3 if you can get it.
I remember when we were doing that episode, like Jane Mansfield, she did Playboy because Marilyn Monroe did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything was like, oh, she did it, I want to do it.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, we did talk about her doing nude photos and things like that. So I mean, it makes sense that the two of them would be involved with Playboy because that was the big one at the time, the big magazine to be in.
Yeah, right.
So you would ask me to do a little background check on more, let's focusing more on the conspiracy theories around how she died, and that was interesting. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people know of her filmography and the status that she kind of received in Hollywood, and in just the public's eye. Obviously, she was a very central character to a lot of people as far as just popularity and glamour and movie stardom was concerned, that she was kind of the epitome of that,
Oh, definitely.
I didn't realize it, but she was actually born and died in L.A. She was raised in L.A. and she was actually an orphan. Her family gave her up, I guess. But she went by Norma Jean Mortensen, which most people know Norma Jean, but I didn't realize it was spelled Jeane. So I didn't realize it. Almost just obviously a little bit of a different spelling, but there's a heavy metal band called Norma Jean that spells it the other way. So I thought they were doing her honor, and I guess maybe not. So, but she was born June 1st, 1926, and became the movie star that she is. Got into film. She was discovered. Selling, gosh, I forget what it was. She was selling something, and she was discovered, and she started a very popular run of pinup shots. She's doing a lot of pinup work. Got a couple of contracts through movie theater or through movie studios, and came up basically and hit her stardom. Didn't feel like she was getting paid a lot of money, so she split off and started her own production company. Finally getting hired on by another studio, and she was getting paid more money and kind of had that stardom of that she was looking for, that notoriety.
Mm-hmm.
obviously everyone knows that she has died. She died on August 4th, 1962. And she was found in bed, found in her bedroom, in bed, naked, clutching the telephone, and some empty pill bottles by the side. So it was pretty classic scene as far as the dramatic suicide on the bed with the pills is concerned, I guess. I don't mean to make that sound insensitive.
No, I mean that does, like, clutching the phone, obviously trying to either call for help or, I mean,
right.
I hate to go like OJ on it, but it's also like that's really convenient.
Yeah, I mean it could look a little staged, and I think that the reason that they didn't think it was staged is because they had a lot of when the police went to kind of investigate and to kind of get what people had to say, namely people like her psychiatrist, her housekeeper, things like this. She had apparently had a reputation of doing this, where she would take pills not necessarily overdose, but she would take pills and then would make a phone call, and generally there was somebody there to come and rescue her, to save her. So the reason that they ruled it a suicide is because of that she had done this in the past. It had been an issue. She did have a known problem with drugs and alcohol, and the reason they didn't think it was an accidental overdose is because of the amount of pills that she took. She basically went to refill her prescription the day before she died, so she had a brand new bottle, and the coroner was like, "Dude, she took way too many pills."
What were the pills?
In order for this to be an accident. So
what were the pills? Did you say that already?
Yeah, it was barbiturates. It was a barbiturate overdose. She had a couple. I think it was one or two pills, but she had been prescribed this by her psychiatrist to help her with stress and with anxiety. There seems to be a lot of she was having trouble with sleeping, and she felt that she was getting kind of paranoid because she felt that people were kind of after her. So there was a lot of things that were going on in her life at the time that seemed to kind of culminate into this like nervous breakdown, taking drugs, combined with depression and probably isolation because she was so huge.
Yeah.
She couldn't let personal people in her life. She'd been married, I think, 3 times. I know twice. She was married to Arthur Miller and Joe DiMaggio.
Who else? Who's the other guy?
So, wait, am I saying that right? Is it Joe DiMaggio?
Joe DiMaggio, yeah.
Yeah, Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
So, So she had this major public life, obviously. She was very famous. She was one of the biggest banking stars in the world. She had, her movies made tons of money. But by, 1961, her last completed film was called The Misfits. She basically, that's kind of when she started getting really upset about, the payment and the way that she was being billed and stuff. She's just like, you're not paying me what I'm worth, basically,
Mm-hmm.
She was hired for a movie called Something's Gotta Give, but the studio fired her, and they publicly were blaming her. They're putting it all on her and saying that she's difficult to work with and it's completely her fault. And they renegotiated, and she went back into filming, and then that was just kind of the end of it. Obviously, she died before that was she could film the rest of that. So as it stands, The Misfits is the last completed film of Marilyn's career.
Crazy.
So,
wow, yeah.
So she dies, and really the coroner does his thing. Doesn't find any signs of foul play or anything like that, other than the fact that she just downed all these bottles of pills. And it's ruled a probable suicide, not a definite, but a probable suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And really, nobody thinks anything of this. I mean, this is 1962, and not for a really long time does anybody think anything of it. And out of the blue, somebody comes out and says, "Well, hey, doesn't it seem kind of weird?" And he starts to bring up all these kind of facts, and so it gets into the public thought that basically maybe there is something to this. Maybe there is somebody or maybe there is somebody who tried to murder her and have it covered up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where our story begins, as far as all the conspiracy theories that go along with Marilyn killing herself. So the biggest conspiracy, and one that seems to me that would be relatively plausible, would be that the Kennedys did it. Okay.
Right.
Now, everybody knows about the famous "Happy Birthday, Mr. President."
Actually, I'm not really familiar. Could you do the entire song?
I could do it with a dress on if you like.
Please
Oh,
do.
man, just so the listeners know, Jameson is now
Please
changing.
do. My birthday's coming up in a couple months. Please do.
Ooh. I will go full drag and do it to it.
Awesome.
No, as long as Patrick's cool with it, then that's fine. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes Tia, but as long as Patrick's because it will be mighty uncomfortable. So basically, everyone knows that she sang for him. She sang that song for him on his 45th birthday at Madison Square Garden. Okay. Mm-hmm. A lot of people speculated that she was having an affair with John Kennedy, and then a lot of people started speculating that she was also kind of messing around with his brother Robert Kennedy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so both of those guys are involved with her. Okay. Whether or not they're sleeping together, that's never been proven or anything like that, but always been speculated. But it seems that the more she hung out with these guys and the more she was in this circle of people, that she potentially overheard things or was involved in conversations of stuff that she should not have been privy to. Whether it was military secrets or people that were, talking about secrets about other, politicians or whatever. She was getting a lot of dirt and had a quote unquote little red book that she was keeping all of this information inside of. Okay. So there's a lot of conspiracies as to which of the Kennedys wanted to have her killed, and why one Kennedy was it was covering up secrets because obviously he didn't want his wife to know, and then was it because this other guy he told her these secrets. So there was a lot of just secrets that supposedly were being told to her and that she knew. If you've ever heard of the name Peter Lawford, he was one of the Rat Packers. Mm-hmm. He was family-in-law with the Kennedys. I think his sister married one of the brothers or something. But Peter Lawford was somehow involved in this, and as it goes is that somebody was bugging the house, and he heard all three of them arguing with each other, and then there was a loud bang right around the time that she supposedly died. But then again, there was no foul play involved with when the autopsy was performed. So what I mean. So there's a lot of conflicting things, but plausible things that she could have been killed for by the Kennedys. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's the biggest conspiracy, is that the Kennedys did it. Now, obviously, did the Kennedys physically do it? Were they the ones that choked her or gave her all the drugs or whatever? Probably not. There was some speculation as to whether Robert Kennedy was actually in California when she died. A lot of people said that they saw him there, but he denied it and said he was in San Francisco. So, there's a lot of speculation there.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh.
Kind of piggybacks into conspiracy number 2, okay, which is the mafia did it. Now, this kind of splits into 2 ways. One theory is that the Kennedys hired Jimmy Hoffa to take care of her and have her taken out because of because of secrets or for whatever. They hired Jimmy Hoffa.
Huh.
Other people think that there was another guy named Boss Sam Giancana. Boss Sam Giancana. Italian, huh? Let's just call him Boss Sam, shall we?
Yeah. They didn't say his full name for sure.
So Boss Sam and or Jimmy Hoffa supposedly maybe hired somebody to had one of their men kill him. So that story comes from the fact that a gentleman named Bernard Spindell, who was a professional wiretapper, had tapped her house, and that's when he heard the phone call about the fighting and the loud bang there. But apparently, also, she was having an affair with a guy named Johnny Roselli, who was one of Boss Sam's guys, and Boss Sam wanted her dead because, of course, Johnny was yapping his mouth to her, and so she had secrets that was quote that could quote expose his operations. Okay, so it seems to me that basically she was sleeping with a lot of people, and she had a lot of dirt on a lot of these people, and a lot of people wanted her dead. Let me see here. So apparently, also the other theory is that the Boss Sam felt that she. Okay, let me start that over again. Boss Sam apparently got her first contract in exchange for information on dirt on people in Hollywood that he could use against people in Hollywood. She had all this information, and that was another reason why he wanted her supposedly gone, because of this whole deal that they had worked out. All right. So okay, but that story ends, and this is a little less plausible. Apparently, that story ends as a gentleman named Darwin Porter, who wrote a book called Marilyn at Rainbow's End, thinks that Boss Sam sent in 5 hitmen who used chloroform on Marilyn, knocked her out, stripped her of her clothes, and then gave her a barbiturate enema.
Oh my God.
To cover up the story, to make it look like that she done all these drugs.
Yeah.
So there's that theory.
Oh my God.
So obviously that's a little bit more ridiculous. You're kind of out there with that one. You're stretching the limits on that one, in my opinion. Let's go to conspiracy number 3. Conspiracy number 3 is a little bit more fun. She was killed because she knew information about Area 51.
I've heard this one. I was going to ask about that if I didn't hear it. Nice.
Yeah, so now apparently this wasn't by the Kennedys. This was actually done by the CIA. Now, apparently, let's see here. Apparently, about 2 days before she was killed, the CIA had redacted a statement saying, or not a statement, but redacted a letter or a transcript that kind of said something about her being told information about Area 51 by John F. Kennedy during quote-unquote pillow talk. And so she might have learned something about that, and so the CIA wanted her snuffed out because she was supposedly threatening to have a press conference about knowing information about that. Yeah. So, but then that CIA document has never been. That was a classified document, so nobody can, prove it. I guess it's never been released.
Yeah.
So. All right, and then so let's go to the final conspiracy. And the final conspiracy is that she's actually still alive. Okay, and a gentleman named John Alexander Baker wrote Marilyn Monroe alive in 1984? Question mark. He feels, or his angle is that her psychiatrist staged her death, and then he actually took her up to Canada, into New Brunswick, and committed her into a mental institution.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
So now he says this because he was actually driving in Canada one day in 1984 and picked up a woman who claimed to be Marilyn. And I guess that they talked for a while, and he said that she resembled her and that she sounded like her, but apparently he said she also had the same singing voice, which makes me believe that he asked her to sing a song or something, and she did. But as he described her, she looked homeless, frightened, and was a paranoid schizophrenic. So he says, I 99% believe her. So obviously those are the 4 biggest conspiracies. There's other rabbit holes you can go down to, but I mean, it definitely basically sounded it sounded to me, at least, that because of her place in pop culture and because of her sexual, because she was such a sexual icon, and because she was so huge, she was able to get into a lot of places that, these powerful men were at. And because of that, I think that they probably like to show off to her, and they like to kind of flex their muscles and, and she heard a lot of stuff. So as far as the conspiracy theories are concerned, that would make very plausible sense that either the mob or the Kennedys, or combined, wanted her dead because of all these secrets that she held.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
I mean, on the other hand, do you look at it as, she was just a woman who was really messed up by the end of her career and was just kind of lost in this fog of, confusion and depression, and took these pills and really did go for that call to get help and just was too late and, didn't make it,
Yeah, and especially because she was like a first of her kind, the whole like blonde bombshell thing, she kind of exploded, and like no one's really equipped to handle that much attention.
But not the attention that she wanted. She
that's
wanted to be taken seriously, but they really almost never did take her seriously. But
I feel like this happens, with like a lot of actresses, unfortunately.
Well, it's funny you say that, because they did say something about that she basically, they put her in 2 movies in a row, which were very popular, but they made her to be a dumb blonde, and she really didn't want to have that negativity attached to her. So she went and she got like very like I forget what the term was, but very deep acting, like very serious deep acting.
Yeah,
classes.
Didn't she study with like the group theater or like Lee Strasberg or something?
Yeah,
like
they didn't see
wife
names.
was
They were just like that. She really was like, I don't want to be typecast this way, so I'm really going to take this seriously. And she was trying to, to probably to be more on the award level of acting as opposed to just a famous actress.
She was really good too.
Yeah.
I've never really seen any movies with her before. I'm not really
the
huge
last
into
one I saw
old
with
movies,
her.
but
I saw the Misfits. I've seen the Misfits.
Yeah, the Misfits was super tragic.
It's
especially
really
knowing
sad.
that was like the last one, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of about how men kind of treat women very poorly.
It's really depressing, but she's so good in it, man. Like I honestly was like kind of like, I don't know, it's like the first time you watch James Dean or something, you're kind of like, oh, this is what people are talking about.
East of Eden.
Right,
and you're heartbroken.
It's just like, you can tell there's a lot of truth in the acting.
Yeah.
And Marilyn at that time, obviously, was not in the good headspace.
Yeah.
Just to tag onto that, I was waiting for like the craziest conspiracy I ever heard was I went to go see this guy talk. I can't remember his name offhand, but now he's like on Ancient Aliens and stuff. But
Giorgio Tsoukalos?
No, not Giorgio Tsoukalos. Yeah, I wish it was. But we went and saw him speak like years ago when I first moved to Hollywood, me and Ernest, when I was more into the conspiracy theory phase of my life. But he said that this guy claimed to have talked to like presidents and stuff. He was like a consultant to, presidents and shit, but he had like, a very wide range of alien beliefs and stuff like that. So, take this with a grain of salt. But he said that he had spoke with Marilyn, and he believed that Marilyn was killed because her and John F. Kennedy were talking about releasing free energy vehicles. They were going to start. They were starting to work with free energy technology, which is, taking the energy out of the air, basically. It's more of it's a concept. It's like a patented concept, but it's not something we can actually do with technology right now, supposedly. But that was what he said, was that him and Marilyn were silenced for that, which is like
interesting.
Which is definitely a crazy thought, a conspiracy. But yeah, when I remember when being back like in that headspace back then, I was like, wow, that's kind of believable.
What do you think?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What do you think, Jameson?
Well, I mean, it's definitely. It's one of those difficult situations because you could definitely give weight to both arguments, especially with with all the bad people that were in her life and that she was involved with. I could see a lot of that happening, and so when it comes to conspiracies, a lot of times I try not to delve too far into that stuff because it's easy to get wrapped up in that stuff and fall down that and start connecting things that aren't necessarily there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what I mean? Like, I will say this. There was two other reasons that that kind of came to mind as far as why the mafia would have had her killed. One was that Hoffa actually wanted revenge on Robert Kennedy because apparently Robert Kennedy was trying to have Hoffa arrested, and brought down. And so that was one reason. And then the other reason was that they thought that she might be a communist sympathizer or friendly with one, and so that all that information in the red book could potentially be damaging because of that.
That makes sense, because Arthur Miller had to go testify in court with the House Un-American Activities something.
Yep.
Yeah. Kills me right now that I can't remember what they were called, but like that's why he wrote The Crucible. Also, fun fact, he wrote The Misfits, which was her last film.
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know. That's cool.
And I think he was still married to her when she died, or they were separated or something. But yeah. Anyways,
but going back to your question, I would say, I mean, without delving too far into it, and I believe the coroner that worked on her was also part of he was one of the coroners during the Manson murders. I think his last name is Noguchi. He was the Los Angeles criminal, he was the big guy for the examiner, the body examiner, mortician, whatever it's called. But when I read his I'm sorry, I do need to say out one other thing. We said, I was telling you guys, in the 1960s or so, it wasn't until the mid-70s that the conspiracy theories started to pop up. So really nobody questioned his autopsy findings until almost 20 years later. It caused so much of a stir that they actually reopened the autopsy and redid an autopsy to see if there could have been foul play if they didn't find anything.
20 years later?
Yeah, it was 19. Let me see here. The date was 1982. They reviewed the case, and same thing. They found nothing. No acts of foul play. There was a small bruise, but it was considered not consistent with the murder. It was just a superficial bruise.
The body.
And so but it was enough. They actually caused enough of a stir for them to re-examine the case and to reopen it. And they really were like, "Yeah, we still haven't found anything that would say that this is drugs or shot up or blood or anything like that."
Did they just reopen the case file, or did they exhume the body?
They didn't re-exhume the body. I think that they just kind of went back and I don't know how it went exactly. That's a good question. I don't know if they actually, because I think that, she's definitely buried in the cemetery, but I don't know if she was cremated or not.
That was where Pat took me on our first date, was to visit her in the cemetery.
That is so romantic.
It is, isn't it?
No, that's cool. I've never been to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery or anything like that.
Well, she's not buried in the Hollywood Forever. She's buried in a different one, but it's downtown. It's in the middle of the
middle of these high-rise skyscrapers and stuff. There's all that's surrounding it because it's just such an old cemetery, but they're not going to move it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Interesting. But yeah, so I guess I would just say that after reading the autopsy reports, after seeing what they said, I think what she did was that she just that time she just took too many pills and just couldn't get to the phone fast enough. She passed out before, maybe it hit her faster, harder than she thought, whatever. She's like, I'll wait for a few minutes and then I'll call, and that few minutes just was too much, They did have one of the people, Peter Lawford, actually testified that he called her and she sounded kind of, out of it on the phone, and he called the house and said, hey, check on her, and the housemaid did look, and she said, no, she's fine, and so you know what I mean? So it does, the story does add up, but you could definitely go down the conspiracy path and it wouldn't sound like you were crazy. At least some of the conspiracies.
Yeah.
Let's stick with the Kennedy and the mob, and we'll leave the CIA and the alien thing we'll leave that on the sideline.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's it, man.
But yeah, so what do you guys think? Have you guys ever heard? Have you guys heard of all these conspiracies before, or just a couple of them?
I've a few of them, yeah.
I'd never really thought about just because I had heard the alien thing that I told you about, and then I'd heard or not alien, free energy, I guess, but it's close. It's a conspiracy. But I didn't really think about just basic knowledge of pillow talk, oh yeah, I could take you to Area 51. It's only 23 minutes from here, or something.
They're all aliens.
Right? Yeah, I feel like that's very plausible. That makes sense.
Sure.
Or it could even be simple things like, when the president walks around with somebody and he inputs a code into a hallway. Like maybe they didn't change codes back then, and they were like, well, maybe we should probably keep an eye on these
We should just
people.
get rid of that broad.
It's not always snuff them out, but I feel like they're probably, very watchful on all these things. And when somebody like Marilyn Monroe, who's treated like a celebrity everywhere, like, because at that time they just didn't know what to do with it. Maybe they just got way too relaxed, and she found out all kinds of shit she wasn't supposed to find out.
It's interesting that you brought up Jimmy Hoffa too, because he kind of disappeared off the face of the planet. Right. Nobody knows what happened to him.
True. Very true. So who knows? Maybe Boss Sam got to him too.
Yeah. We should definitely do a episode where we talk about Jimmy Hoffa.
There you go.
Yeah.
We'll just have to tie.
So Marilyn Monroe, everybody. Even to this day,
very cool.
Still confounding people with her death.
Yeah, right.
Very cool. Going on our theme of people who died way too soon, I'm going to talk about the lovely and amazing queen of rock and roll, queen of psychedelic soul, the legendary Miss Janis Joplin. Yeah. I took that quote from Teresa, who we love. If she's listening to this, we love you, Teresa. Our tour guide Teresa's obsessed with Janis Joplin, so
she's a nut.
She's a nut,
for
yeah.
Janis Joplin.
Let's just get into it. So Janis Lynn Joplin was born on January 19th, 1943, in the very conservative town of Port Arthur, Texas. They are an oil refining town. I have a quote here from one of her high school friends, and he goes on to describe the town as manicured lawns, Little League baseball, normal middle-class looking type town. And he says her mother wanted Janis to be what every mother wanted them to be. That was popular, have a date for the prom, and dress nice. Wear her hair right, and it became pretty clear in high school that Janis wasn't going to follow that road. So, as she got older, so I don't think that women should ever be like reduced to their looks, or like their worth be judged on, how pretty they are. But this is like the 1940s and 50s, and she's in high school, and like your looks are kind of everything. So she didn't really develop in puberty, and she suffered from acne in high school, and people really, acne, God forbid. People really bullied her though back then. And so she started to rebel. She would dress in all black, and she swore like a sailor, which, women didn't do in the 1950s. They weren't big on swearing back then. But she did find like a small group of like-minded friends, and they would make trips to Louisiana and visit the black music clubs. And that's where she would be introduced to jazz and blues for the first time. And her friend quotes, "We went from midnight to dawn, prowling the clubs, listening to blues players, jazz players, digging the music, and drinking."
There you go.
So, in 1962, she leaves Austin to attend art school at the University of Texas. So her friend, Powell St. John, has her join his band, the Walla Creek Boys.
Sure.
Because Janis knew all of these country and blues songs, which they played. Something really terrible happened to her, though, at the University of Texas. So, the fraternities would have these, like, festivals, where at this festival, they would nominate a guy from the fraternity as the ugliest man. And someone was so cruel to nominate Janis, and she ended up winning. Yeah. And
Ouch.
Her friend...
Speaking of Carrie...
Yeah, speaking of Carrie, right? Her friend, Pal St. John, says that was the only time he ever saw Janis cry. So, the next year, she hitchhikes to San Francisco. She leaves Texas behind. She finds gigs in coffee shops and bars. And this is where she starts doing drugs for the first time. Then in 1965, she returns to Port Arthur and tries to get clean for a short time. Her friend said that she weighed about 87 pounds. She was a total basket case, and she had damn near killed herself.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So she tries to get clean for like a short period of time, but in 1966, she ends up moving back to San Francisco. So this is where she joins a band called Big Brother and the Holding Company. They were looking for a vocalist, and their manager knew Janis from the University of Texas. And he kind of describes to them, like, oh, I know this girl. She knows all these country songs, and she's got this great, wonderful voice. Like, you guys just wait. I'm going to go get her and bring her here, and I really think she should join the group. So he goes and he brings Janis in, and they all describe that she was not what they thought she was going to be. They're expecting, like, this beautiful, like, I imagine that they were imagining, like, a Dolly Parton, like, country singer, like, beautiful, curvy, blonde, sparkly person, but they described the way she looked as looking, scraggly looking girl, like a stray cat. Like, you just went and plucked a stray cat out of the alley and brought her in. But Janis starts singing, and the band instantly knew that she was a perfect match for them. They were like an improvisational jamming type of band, and her bluesy vocals like fit perfectly with their style. And the rest is history, really. So she was still trying to get clean for a while and keep her drug use under control. That is until we get to June 16th, 1967, the Summer of Love. Yeah. So Big Brother gets to perform at the Monterey International Pop Festival, which is really cool because that's my hometown, Monterey, California. So
nice.
Yeah, and the Pop Festival's like a big deal. So Mamas and the Papas are there performing, like all the big names. And so Janis Joplin's 24 years old. She gets up on stage. Like, Big Brother's kind of not really known at the time. They've never recorded any albums, They've had a few performances, but this is like the first time they're performing to...
It's like their debut, kind of.
Yeah, their debut to such a big audience, and first time really debuting Janis being with the group. And when she opens her mouth to sing, like, everybody is blown away. In the video, you can see Mama Cass in the audience with her jaw completely dropped. Like, she's just like in awesome. Awe of Janis. And because of this performance, she is an overnight sensation. Let me see, I have this quote here. The Sam Andrew, the guitarist from Big Brother, says, Janis took to fame very well. She was up to it. For one thing, she was faster, funnier, and more intelligent by far than most of the people we ran into. So she starts doing these interviews on the Dick Cavett show. And Dick Cavett, he had a late night talk show, and he's in love with Janis. When you see him interviewing her, like, he wants her, he loves her so much, he's so intrigued by her, and she just finds him hilarious. And they have this little like back and forth, like he's like this total nerd, and she's like poking fun at him, and like he's in awe of her. It works really, really well. So from Monterey on, though, she starts to become kind of a diva, and it's no longer Big Brother and the Holding Company. It's now Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company, and they start to notice that her name gets bigger and bigger on the marquee outside of these venues, and she's outbilling the band. The press loves Janis, and they paid very little attention to the band. So they go in to record their first album together, and it was rough, and they argued through the whole thing, and they're just not ready to really be in the situation where they're in like this sterile type of recording session. Like, they're a jam band. And so it kind of like doesn't really, work out, and they argue a lot. So in 1968, Janis announces that she's leaving Big Brother behind, but they still need to complete their tour. They had to do a few performances knowing that Janis was leaving them behind. And it was awkward, to say the least. So in 1969, she forms the Cosmic Blues Band. Now, these were people that were like handpicked by Janis now. And she's going to create this amazing band, but she has never led a band before, and she struggles really hard with it. They're constantly changing members. They go through 5 different drummers.
Wow.
She poaches Sam Andrews from Big Brother, but he says, like, I was no longer her bandmate, but now I was an employee of Janis.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And the press is not happy about this. The critics do not like the change. They tell her, or they claim that Janis has abandoned Big Brother, and this affects her, so she ends up going back into drugs and drinking very heavily. So she's no longer drinking after the performances that they're doing, but now drinking heavily before the performances, and it starts to affect how she performs. So I have this quote here. Sam Andrews actually says, if everyone was drinking, she would drink the most in the room. If everyone was doing drugs, she would do the best drugs and the most drugs than anyone in the room. So in March of 1969, while in San Francisco, she has her first overdose. And then that summer in 1969, she performs at Woodstock. And her manager says that she physically was not in good shape. In 1969, she disbands the Cosmic Blues Band. So in 1970, she attempts to get clean, and she really takes it serious this time. She's changed. She takes charge of her new band, Full Tilt Boogie Band. The Full Tilt Boogie Band. So she has a new band that she's working with. She goes on to something called Festival Express, which sounds really cool. So they travel from the US to Canada on this train, and it's all of these like famous musicians kind of just like hanging out on this train, and they stop and they perform, and she's there with the Grateful Dead, who she was friends with prior to this. So she's having a great time traveling on this train. It's like Snowpiercer, but like super cool. So she does that, which is awesome, and she's back on top. And so in August of 1970, she decides she's going to go to her high school reunion. And she gets on the Dick Cavett show, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to show them how successful I am. And she really wants to rub it in their faces. But when she returns to her hometown, the people in the hometown are not thrilled about this. They're very cold to her. The press actually shows up to her high school reunion to interview her, and you can just see it on her face that she really regrets coming back and acting like a big jerk to everybody. And she's very vulnerable at this time. So then we come to October 3rd, 1970. So, for a couple months, Janis is in LA recording the album Pearl. And during this time, she's staying at a hotel called the Landmark Motor Hotel, which is now currently the Highland Gardens Hotel. This is actually a place that you guys know, but this is a place that we visit on our tour. for Hollywood's Haunted. The nickname for the Landmark Motor Hotel was the Landmine, and that's kind of what like all the cool people called it, you know. And it was known to be very close to Hollywood Boulevard, and known to be like in good proximity to the Sunset Strip, and also all of the drug dealers. So, for a month up to this point, So a month up to this point, Janis had been working on Pearl. So on October 3rd, 1970, at 1:30 in the afternoon, she's alone in her room as her band records at Sunset Sound, the recording studio, a little ways away on Sunset Boulevard. She's not needed there till much later, so she's just sitting in her room. She's kind of bored, getting antsy, and so she makes a phone call to City Hall in San Francisco, trying to get information about a marriage license. So she's engaged to a man named Seth Morgan, who he's living in San Francisco at the time, at her house, actually. And so she calls to get about information on a marriage license for her and Seth, who've been dating for a few months. Most people were really skeptical about the relationship, though. They were kind of already saw that Seth wasn't as into Janis as she was into him. John Cook, who was her manager at the time, says, Janis said it was different from her previous relationships. She describes it as positive. They didn't have to go out boogieing every night. They could read the morning paper and talk about current affairs. So she's got this really positive outlook on this relationship, and she's, ready to settle down. But she doesn't get through to City Hall on the phone because, well, it's Saturday and they're not open till Monday. So she, being bored, she decides to make a phone call to her Candyman. Bum, bum, bum. So he agrees to come by the hotel with a little package for her. So at 3:30 p.m., her drug dealer shows up with heroin.
Oh, drug dealer? I think you're talking about the guy that kills you with the hook and stuff.
Oh, yeah. No.
I was expecting just a giant lollipop, actually.
Yeah, there's like the lollipop
He's an
guild.
actual Candyman.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, so her manager, John Cook, says she had been clean for 6 months and proud of it up to this point. She had done it for herself because that's what you have to do. You have to do it for yourself. So, unfortunately, her dealer, who usually tests the product beforehand, and this, he had not had time to test it, so he's giving her product that he doesn't know, really what's in it.
How strong it is.
Yeah. So, neither the dealer nor Janis is aware that the heroin is not, or is uncut, and it would be up to 50% pure. Yeah. So I have street heroin is diluted less than 3% pure when tested. Later, it's found that what Janis has is 40% pure. So, yeah. So, okay, so then she calls her fiance Seth Morgan up in San Francisco, and previously there had been talk of quitting the business and them settling down, having kids, living together, and she's really hasn't seen Seth in over a month since she's been in LA. So he was supposed to fly into LA that next day, but as she's on the phone with him, he's like, hey, sorry, change of plans, I've chosen not to come down there at all. And just basically cancels on her last minute. So, at 5:30, she does arrive at Sunset Sound to kind of go over what the band is recording that day, which is a song called Buried Alive in the Blues. And the band's been working on it all day, trying to get it right. And so when she arrives, they've got it down. She listens to it. She's super happy with it. And the next day they're planning to record her vocals, supposedly, the next day. her manager, Paul Rothschild, is there, and he's telling her this new album's going to be a huge hit. So around 11 p.m., she calls Seth Morgan one more time. She doesn't get a hold of him. Instead, she gets a hold of her roommate, and her roommate's like, yeah, Seth has gone out for the night. So her and her band members end up going to Barney's Beanery later that night, which is a restaurant that's still here in LA. Famously, you know, she drinks her favorite whiskey, which is Wild Turkey, and at somewhere around 12:30 a.m., she returns back to her hotel room, room 105. So she goes to her room alone, and she shoots up somewhere around 12:30. Then, you know, before the heroin hits her, you know, she goes to the front desk and she asks for change for the cigarette machine. She chats with the night manager. She buys a pack of Marlboros and returns back to her room. She starts undressing. She's down to her, like, tank top and her underwear. And then the heroin hits her and she lurches forward and passes out face down. She's not discovered till 18 hours later.
Oh.
So the next day when she doesn't show up at the studio, her producer, Paul Rothschild, who had just talked to her and seen her the day before, calls her manager, John Cook. And John Cook goes to the Landmark Hotel. He goes by the front desk. He's able to get the key, opens her room, and finds her dead on the floor. There's no question that she is dead. He says that he touches her, and he can feel that there is no spirit left in the body at all. So her time of death is estimated about 1:30 a.m.
So they didn't show up till like 9 then?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. Just to give you an idea of how prevalent drugs were in LA, and also the impact of this possible same stash that Janis Joplin had, 8 other people die of an almost pure heroin overdose that same weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a trip.
Wow.
So Pearl is released 4 months later, and it is Janis's best-selling album ever. So if you do visit the Landmark Hotel, there is still a little plaque outside of the door that says, you know, this was where Janis Joplin stayed. A lot of guests like to write little love notes to her. There's like kind of a makeshift shrine in the walk-in closet of room 105. There's another popular podcast called Ghost Town that I was listening to, where they did like a whole night where they stayed there and they brought in a psychic and they interviewed the security guard, and the security guard says that he sees Janis there all the time, that, you know, she's definitely still there. And their psychic definitely says there's a presence, especially in the room. There's some sadness in the room. So it's, I don't know, to me it's nice to think that maybe Janis is still kind of, you know, around as well. When I worked at Hard Rock Cafe, which I worked with Jameson, there was a gentleman who was friends with Janis Joplin, and he had a tattoo on his arm that he said Janis had drawn for him, and he would always rent out her room on her birthday and throw a little birthday party for her in the room.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, and it was cool to see that, you know, working at Hard Rock Cafe, him come in, because the hotel is right around the corner from where the Hard Rock
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's like right up the street.
Yeah. And that is the last 24 hours of Janis Joplin and her incredible story.
Damn.
So
I have a question for you. They were in the middle of recording Pearl, you said, when she died?
Uh-huh.
But they were able to still release an album, even though she passed away during the recording of it. They were still able to have enough recordings.
Well, yeah, they had been working on it for a whole month up to that point. From my understanding, the only song that they didn't end up completing was that song that they were working on, which was Buried Alive in the Blues. There is no vocal recording from Janis.
But so they kept the rest of the track. So
I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure if that's on there. But yeah, she was 27. She is of the 27 Club, which I would love to do an episode in the future.
We definitely should.
Where we talk a little bit about, Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison and Kurt Cobain and yeah.
That'd be cool. I'd be down.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that's
Let me
my
see
story.
Here. Let's see if baby. Yeah, Buried Alive in the Blues. It's on the album.
Okay.
Oh,
nice.
cool.
But whether or not it has vocals to it, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it does.
It always seemed really cool to me about her is that she just seemed like one of those people that would kind of float around those circles of blues and that kind of area, blues and jazz and gospel and stuff, that she could just kind of be in that element. That's mostly, at the time, was mostly black entertainers that were, into that field. And she seemed to fit in. I mean, not that they were considered misfits, but, obviously black music at that time, blues and jazz was very looked down upon and looked at as like, dangerous music. And she really kind of, well, from what you said, sounds like she really kind of adhered to that. She really liked hanging out with those kind of people, maybe because she was kind of a freak, it seems, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she had a lot to get out.
An outcast, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was interesting to me that she could just she could be in that society, if you will, and be so readily accepted. Like, hell yeah, come with us. First of all, we don't even care what color your skin is. We just, you have the talent and the chops and the voice to do this kind of music that we're into, and get your ass up on stage and let's do it. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. And she has like one of those voices too that like, it's, I bet seeing someone do that live, it must be weird because you're like, it's just too good. Like her, and it's so distinct as well.
Totally.
So speaking of blues, you guys might know this blues brother. I'm going to be talking to you guys about John Adam Belushi. Are you guys fans of John Belushi?
Sure, absolutely. Blues Brothers.
I like the Blues Brothers. I like Animal House.
I mean,
Animal House, sure.
I like most of the stuff that he does. I wasn't like a giant John Belushi fan, but I mean, he was in everything that I grew up with. He's probably best known as one of the original members of SNL, Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
There's just 7 cast members at the time. He was actually brought in because Dan Aykroyd wanted him in, and Lorne Michaels was like, okay.
Yeah.
They were all just friends.
I mean, who says no to Dan Aykroyd?
That's, I mean, what I mean. Also, it's like, yeah, if you want Dan Aykroyd, then you better just hire this dude.
We should do, sorry to go off track, but we should do an episode on Dan Aykroyd, because he is really into aliens and ghosts and the paranormal,
true, yeah.
And his dad actually wrote several books about the paranormal, and then that's what he's also like really into drinking, and his whole brand of Crystal Skull, or what is it? Is it Crystal Skull?
Yeah, you're right. Yep,
yeah.
You're right.
Vodka's all based on that whole, thing about the Mayans and or the Incas or whatever, Aztecs had the crystal skulls, and I'll know more information on it when we do the podcast. But yeah, we should do a whole Ghostbusters maybe.
No, that's a good
thing,
one. Yeah,
and talk about.
Because that's
Mr.
what Ghostbusters
Aykroyd
was supposed to be, right? It was like an homage to his dad. And, but yeah, I would love to do that.
Stay tuned.
John Belushi was actually supposed to be in Ghostbusters, if you didn't know that. If you don't know John Belushi, his biggest movies were Animal House, Blues Brothers. I loved him in National Lampoon's Lemmings. That was like his breakout role. Did you guys ever see that?
Is that a movie? Lemmings?
It's like it's weird. It's like did you ever see like Spinal Tap?
This is Spinal
Sorry,
Tap.
what was it?
Did you ever see This Is Spinal Tap?
Oh, sure. Uh-huh.
It's kind of in that sense, but it's like
So it's
Woodstock.
Like a mockumentary?
Yeah, so
documentary?
John
Okay.
Belushi plays like a singer, and like you just kind of see like all these different actors go up as portraying different singers. You know, I think someone does like Bob Dylan or something, but it's pretty funny. I think Christopher Guest is on it, who is also the director of This Is Spinal Tap. I think.
Mm-hmm.
He did all those weird parody movies.
Yeah, Waiting for Guffman and stuff.
Waiting for Guffman, So yeah, definitely watch that. Like I said, I'm not the biggest Belushi fan, but I loved that. That was hilarious, and he does have a lot of really funny characters. I loved that cheeseburger, that shit on SNL. Oh my god, that had me dying as a kid. Like, oh my god. But like I said, he was brought on because he was a friend of Dan Aykroyd. I think maybe Chevy Chase too. But he had started his own little improv troupe when he first started in comedy, and then he was picked up by Second City, and that was when Second City was just starting out. He was literally picked up by the owner and the creator of Second City. And then from that point, they were hired on NBC's Saturday Night Live, but I was also the first year, so it was like the first time producing it. You could tell it was definitely like a rough. Yeah, it was. They weren't exactly sure what it was supposed to be, but that's the beauty of the show, I guess. But yeah, like I said, he did a bunch of other movies, and then he was going to be staying at the Chateau Marmont, where our story kind of begins. If you've never been to the Chateau Marmont, it's in right off of Sunset, like kind of towards West Hollywood, I guess. I wouldn't know what exact area to call that.
It's really, what's that, really Doheny nice. Or something?
Doheny Drive, yeah, something right there. Yeah. But yeah, really nice area. It's Chateau Marmont's kind of known as the place to go to kind of get away with your shit as a celebrity. They really look down upon people that are going to be like snooping or gossiping and stuff like that.
Like the celebrity hideout.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a celebrity hideout. It's been that way for a long time. But even nowadays, they have a rule that if you're caught, like they follow your social media. And if you're caught tweeting or something about a celebrity that's staying there, you're banned for life. But that, wow. I thought that was crazy, yeah. Originally, it opened up in 1929. It was a really new, elegant, exclusive apartment building at that time. But due to the high cost of rent, and this was pretty much right when the Great Depression started, it was then converted into a hotel so it could make some money. During World War II, it served as an air raid shelter for the residents in the area. But yeah, like I said, it's known for its to be able to hide your your goings on, I guess.
Well, yeah, and like celebrities need privacy too. They're just like anybody.
Yeah, you know? Exactly.
They don't always want to be followed by TMZ or, the 1970s or 80s equivalent to that.
Right. Yeah. There was the reputation to misbehave dates back to the days of the Motion Picture Code. The code specified not only what could and not be shown on screen, but also its expectation of the star's behavior off camera. So studios would rent apartments and rooms for the purpose of having a safe place for their star to go crazy, basically. You know what I mean? Like that was really what it was for. The famous example of that was Harry Conn, who was the head of Columbia Pictures at the time. He told two of his randiest young stars, I had to keep that in, William Holden and Glenn Ford, and this is in quotes, "If you must get into trouble, do it at the Chateau Marmont," which I think should be the slogan,
should be their slogan
on the website.
Yeah,
if you must get into trouble, do it at the Chateau Marmont.
Hell of a bumper sticker right there.
Right, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, when we went by, Pat and I went by, and like, we went by to like just take pictures of it, and like, I don't know. This was like early on this summer, and there was definitely a security guard outside looking at us. But honestly, though, if you didn't know where the Chateau Marmont was, you would probably drive
right past it. Yeah.
Many, many, many times. Like,
also, the way it's positioned, there's no real way you can like park or hang out. It's kind of like at a curve that's going up.
a very steep hill.
Yeah, really steep hill. Like, yeah, it's not. Yeah, a lot of people liked that. Really appreciated that. So it was actually designed off of the Chateau Marmont was designed after the place where Leonardo da Vinci was actually buried. It's a big like castle basically. Yeah, that's kind of why it looks sort of gothic. If you kind of, but it's weird. You can't really see it unless you're up in the hills. When you see it, you just see this like lavish entrance, and that's kind of.
And it's like covered by a lot of greenery as well.
Mm-hmm. That a lot of people thought that was a way to bring in European guests into Hollywood, like as a place for them to stay and feel comfortable, which was kind of true.
I always think it's weird when people do that, though, because it's like when you go visit a foreign place, why would you want to see something just like...
Right, yeah. That reminds me of like The Simpsons, where they go to America Town in Japan.
Or like that city, the Thames Town in Shanghai, is that British town. They have like police boxes or telephone boxes and stuff. And it's like this abandoned city because the whole idea of putting a British city in Shanghai was ridiculous and never worked out for people.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So yeah, that's the Chateau Marmont. So Belushi started staying there, and he was actually introduced to it by Lorne Michaels, who had stayed there for long periods of time, on and off. He actually said, "I lived all around in the hotel, moving from room to room. If I had the money, I moved to a larger suite. If not, I took a smaller one." So this is just kind of going off of his ebbing and flowing of his career, I guess. But yeah, I guess everybody just wanted to stay there because everybody's there too. These are people, celebrities and stuff that are, people that are high paid that don't have a place to just kind of chill and hang out. John Belushi had been staying at the place earlier that month, earlier in the winter, and he was staying upstairs on the number 69. But he ended up leaving because his neighbor would complain about his music and John Belushi being a crazy person, and then John Belushi would complain about their crying baby in the morning. So the management was able to just move him to a different area.
I'm so glad our crying baby neighbors don't say anything about our crazy music.
They better not, yeah.
Shut that baby up!
It's like almost on a timer, man. Like,
it's a lot.
Yeah, something's going on. Well, that's another episode. What's going on with the crying baby next door?
Yeah, why is it still a baby after 2 years? Okay, anyways.
So he moved to a different penthouse, number 54. Unfortunately, he moved from that one too because his wife, Judy, who was visiting his bungalow, I guess at the time, walked in and found a Quaalude on the floor, and was like, are you sure you want to stay in this one? Like, he had just moved in, and that was like already on the floor, supposedly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that must have been the guy before me.
It probably just fell out of his pocket, and he's like, "Oh shit!"
I know. I was like, he didn't take it out of her hand and eat it.
I mean, yeah, right. And that's like not a bonus.
Well, apparently he had like he was like, a pretty rambunctious dude, right? But apparently a lot of people were saying that he was very much on the verge of making like another film, like another hit. Like he was actually writing a lot.
And he was gonna do that.
Meaning like he was in his prime?
What's that?
Meaning like he was in his prime?
Yeah, like, but a lot of people think he was, because of the, how he died. A lot of people think that that's how, he just always was this crazy, horrible, out of control person, which in some cases he kind of was, but there was more purpose to it. He still was working on trying to do more stuff. Yeah,
God, it was like he was just locked in a hotel room for 2 weeks doing drugs like crazy.
Yeah, he didn't go like Howard Hughes or anything. He was still doing his thing. I guess. But yeah, like when you mentioned Took, yeah, he was supposedly doing that as well. So he moves all of his stuff again into another spot, and the film he was actually wanted to make was Noble Rot. It was a romantic comedy about a robbery scheme set in the early years of the California wine industry. And in the days after his arrival, he would take meetings with writers and executives, and he would actually ask his friends like impressions of the script. Like he was working really hard, even though a lot of people think that he was just drinking and going crazy, but that's what you do afterwards. And also, you're a comedian who's like at the height of your career. I'm sure he was partying all the time, which I'll definitely get to a little bit later. But he was starting to burn out after a while, and his manager Bernie Brillstein noticed that the work wasn't going very well. That he was starting to slow down and just get really distracted. Basically Bernie found out because Paramount Pictures had received no updates about the film, and he had told Bernie that he had been talking to Paramount back and forth, which I guess wasn't true. So the studio ran out of patience, and they cut the film, and it was actually Michael Eisner, who was the Paramount Productions boss. He actually decided to pitch Belushi a brand new idea. So he wasn't completely cutting ties with John Belushi. He just was figured, we'll just try something new. And it was supposed to be an adaptation of The Joy of Sex. With Belushi playing a variety of characters representing the range of human sexual experience.
Sorry, so that's the movie that he was going to pitch to him, or that was the one he was working on that he wasn't finishing up?
This is what Michael Eisner wanted to pitch to him because Noble Rot was not happening.
What was it called?
The Joy of Sex.
Yeah, but you said Noble Rob?
Noble Rot was the romantic comedy. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's supposed to represent different stages.
Yeah.
Of
So
sex.
Belushi would play a variety of characters representing the range of human sexual experience. That sounds fucking weird.
That sounds not like
like
no offense
not in his
to
range.
John Belushi, but
I just imagine that pimple popping scene in Animal House. you know what I mean? Like
oh, man.
excitement. Yeah, that's.
Well, I was thinking maybe like Herman's Head or something like that, where he's like running around, or what was that Pixar movie with the emotions there?
Inside Out.
Inside Out.
Yeah, Inside Out. Like I could see him.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Different, emotions of sex or whatever, feelings of sex. That's interesting.
That's hilarious. Well, it's too
Could've been
bad.
interesting.
Too bad we didn't get that gem.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what Herman's Head was? I'm kind of old. I think I'm dating myself on this one.
Herman?
I think.
No.
I mean. No.
Yeah.
Simple answer.
Yeah. No, it was like some sitcom that was on in the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s. But it was like same thing. You had the guy named Herman, and you had his emotions inside his head, and they were all played by different people arguing inside of his head.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, the girl who plays Lisa Simpson, the voice, she was on the show.
Oh, Yardley Smith.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, she was like one of Herman's coworkers.
That's a trip
on the show.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyways,
I'd like to see her because I've never seen her in anything.
She's in what was that? We're Back. Don't you remember in We're Back with the dinosaurs?
Oh,
she's in Maximum Overdrive.
Oh.
Can
I just say?
Did you ever want to see a blender kill somebody?
Oh, awesome.
No, I think I remember that.
Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, it's a Stephen King movie. It's like all the electronics of the world rise up to kill everybody.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like Stephen King. Yeah.
What's his name? Charlie Sheen's brother there, isn't it?
Emilio Estevez.
Emilio Estevez.
Thank you.
The Mighty Ducks guy.
Emilio!
So continue.
So yeah, he was gonna be representing characters in the sexual experience, which is really awkward and weird. But so everybody pretty much started noticing that he was off. It wasn't just his lack of work anymore. It was, his attention span was gone. He would take mysterious phone calls around the clock. He was constantly late or just completely gone from meetings and appointments. His hotel room looked like an absolute pigsty. He wasn't even talking to people like when they would come over. He was just kind of there. And a lot of people said that they saw him in the exact same outfit for like a week. Yeah, so he just really didn't give a shit, I guess. One of the Al Reinert, who was a filmmaker that was staying there, he said that he remembered seeing John Belushi in the valet area, and he'd said that he would just he would pace around in the valet area, muttering incomprehensible curses. His pupils as black and dilated as wide open camera lenses. Which is great when a filmmaker makes a metaphor to his own work. Like, just in case you didn't know, I'm a filmmaker.
Oh wow.
So everybody kind of assumed he was using drugs. That was kind of what everybody did. I mean, back then he would devour food and booze, and all of these drugs with gusto. He would do it like because his comedy was about going too far more often than not. Very physical and loud and boisterous, and like this. So when he would go to parties, he would be kind of expected to be on and to be, oh, you're gonna do a line, I'm gonna do a mound. Like he would constantly have to have this superhuman capacity for everything, but it's because everybody thought of this as a character.
He set that bar too high for himself, huh?
Right? Yeah. He was very much he was constantly down the hedonism path, I guess. He was a womanizer too. I think it was Jane Curtin who said that he had zero respect for the females at the Saturday Night Live staff. I don't know if this was just specifically at this drug point, or that definitely had to be before. He wasn't doing SNL at that time. But yeah, Jane Curtin said specifically that he would actually go out of his way to destroy material that was written by a woman. He would. I guess he would purposely say the stuff wrong or say it in a completely normal blank tone. And obviously he's supposed to say it a different way. He would just sabotage the skit. But yeah, that just had to throw that in there. But yeah, so everybody knew that he was pretty much wasted and high, but it was Hollywood in the 80s, it was expected. It was definitely tolerated, if not encouraged. These are stars that generate income for giant conglomerates, so that's like why the Chateau Marmont exists, in my opinion, is so people can be like, like, just make the movie, you can have whatever you want, just make the film, like, but not concerned about their actual mental state or well-being. I think this is a common thing, unfortunately.
That's come up in our past stories, especially that one you told me about with what was it? The studio had their own private doctor work on her, and they didn't tell her that she was sick.
Oh yeah. Who was that?
What's her name? I'm sorry, I forgot who the actress was.
Gosh. And this was my story too.
I was about to say, I was like, thank God that wasn't my story because I can't remember.
But yeah, you said that they refrained from telling her that she had
kidney failure,
cancer or whatever. She died.
I can't remember.
Too bad I throw my notes away at the end of all of these.
It wasn't Jane Mansfield, but it was
Jean Harlow.
Jean Harlow, there you go.
Nice, yeah.
They screwed her over big time, huh?
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, like it was. That's just kind of how Hollywood works. And definitely in the '80s, there were a lot less guidelines and I mean, we all know the 80s was, nobody gave a shit.
I mean, everyone was on cocaine in the 80s.
Yeah, I think that was mandatory.
Yeah.
So, but John Belushi was, kind of not on a hot streak either at this time, so it was kind of easy to resort to drugs. His 1981 films Continental Divide and Neighbors were total bombs, and the 1979 film Steven Spielberg's 1941 was also a bomb. He saw a little bit of success with the Blues Brothers, mostly because of the cult following that it developed later on. So they actually they were able to kind of balance it out with selling concerts and I mean, I remember I looked it up to try and find some of the Blues Brothers music, and there's tons of CDs of like the anniversary edition, the re-release of the director's cut edition, like, so they obviously sold a lot of those. And I remember, I mean, even growing up, when I grew up, there was my family was all about the Blues Brothers. They had memorabilia and all that other crap.
That movie still holds up, by the way.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since I was like 8. Or not.
I watched it about 6 months ago, and it's fantastic.
I'm gonna have to check it out. So yeah, like his last real hit was actually Animal House, which was almost 4 years earlier.
Also, fantastic movie, by the way.
That is a crazy movie. That one's still a good movie. Yeah,
still holds up, even though it was made in 1975 or something like that, 78.
Yeah,
70. I can't remember. I should have written.
Whatever. Awesome movie, still hilarious.
Yeah. That one's actually good. Yeah, I've seen that one recently. But yeah, he hadn't done anything good in 4 years, which is a long time in Hollywood. So he was really worried that his career was on the outs. That was one reason people thought that he was working so hard, and why he was doing drugs to try and cope with that. So he ends up going to a strip club for a little while, and he meets I'm sorry.
Did they say what strip club?
No. Meeting at a Sunset Strip nightclub.
Oh, nightclub.
Oh, so it wasn't a strip nightclub. Oh.
Strip nightclub.
Yeah.
Sunset Strip nightclub.
What is the one on Sunset that's a strip club?
I think it's called Center
the
or something,
Body
right?
Shop.
The Body
Shop? Yeah. Good call.
Sorry.
Don't ask how I know that.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, while Belushi was trashing his bungalow and himself, people were actually trying to get him better because they noticed that this was going really south. And his wife Judy and his best friend Dan Aykroyd really wanted to help him out. So Dan Aykroyd would constantly be at the Chateau Marmont at this point, trying to, kind of bring him out of this without having him to go, cold turkey, he thought, there was still life in him yet. He was seen, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi were seen at this period of time actually having a mock sword fight in the lobby lounge. Some people were saying they were using long candles as weapons, and then it lasted 30 minutes.
A half an hour of that. Huh?
It's there was a couple different stories on that.
Jesus.
At that time too, Dan Aykroyd was actually working on Ghostbusters, and they were talking about having, obviously John Belushi be in it. I think they ended up getting Bill Murray afterwards
to play that role. Yeah.
So yeah, he was constantly just still locked in the bungalow, even though Dan Aykroyd is coming by every now and then. It still really wasn't enough. He did have other friends that were checking in on him, but not exactly in the super nice "I want you to get better" way. They just wanted him to come out and party. One of those specifically being Robert De Niro. Who, if you didn't know or see a picture of Robert De Niro in the 80s, dude loved coke, man. Oh my god.
Yeah, I bet.
God. I mean, the stories I read, he obviously loved coke, but man, seriously, any picture you see of him in the 80s, he looks like he's like on his way to go get some more. like you just stopped him, and he's like, okay, yeah, let's finish this up. Let's finish this conversation. You want an autograph? Okay, cool. But yeah, he was he and Robin Williams, who was actually staying in the Chateau Marmont, would check in on him every now and then, but mostly to do coke.
Probably
that was actually definitely their thing. But he was doing coke and heroin. John Belushi was at the time, and a lot of people thought like they would just be disgusting to be around him. But Robert De Niro was like still like, yeah, just go throw up real quick and we'll just do some more coke, which was actually one of the stories.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I just had major flashbacks of. Never mind.
Go ahead.
Wow.
So on Thursday night, March 4th, Robert De Niro is going around town with actor Harry Dean Stanton. And they kept calling John Belushi to come out and hang out with him. He kept not picking up. This was first at Dan Tana's, which is an Italian restaurant. A lot of movie stars apparently go there. I've never been.
I've never even heard of Dan Tana's.
Because we're not movie stars, I guess.
Well, okay. It's
probably changed names to like Chris Tana's. Don't worry, I'll insert left. So after that, they went to On the Rocks, another exclusive nightclub on the Sunset Strip. So they were kind of upset that they weren't reaching him, so they actually went to the Chateau Marmont. And unfortunately, they found him in quite the awful state. Quite the awful state. The living room was in shambles, not sloppy, but actually trashed, as if in a rage, like he had just tore the place apart. And worse, a flinty, hard-eyed woman named Kathy was lounging in amidst discarded pizza boxes and wine bottles and dirty laundry. Some people claim that she actually trashed the place. But De Niro didn't like the look of her at all, and he called her trashy later. And he was happy to leave when Belushi suggested that he and Stanton go back to On the Rocks and return to the bungalow after the club closed. So they were like, he's like, just leave and come back. I'll clean up, and it'll look nice by the time you get back. So De Niro left.
Did he say that she looked trashy because she was literally lying in trash?
I mean, yeah. I mean, how could you not? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. When I lie in trash, I make trash look good.
That's true.
Yeah, like, she looks kind of trashy.
He's just
Why
like,
do you say
man,
that? Well, she has pizza boxes and wine bottles and Kleenex and
like actually trashy.
On her.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Oh my god.
Yes, she looks trashy. Get her out of here.
Oh man. So De Niro left, and when he returned to the chateau a few hours later, it was to his own suite, and this was still with Harry Dean Stanton and a pair of women they met. That's when he got a phone call from Robin Williams, and the comedian actually ran into De Niro and Stanton at On the Rocks, and they all agreed they should go to Belushi's after Robin Williams' set, actually at the Comedy Store. Which is also on the Sunset Strip. On the phone, De Niro told Williams that he was busy and that he should stop by John Belushi's on his own. So Williams did, and like Robert De Niro, he was actually weirded out by the scene still, and did a little coke still, though, and left. He's like, oh, this is creepy. I'll stay for 3 lines.
I'll just do some coke off this pizza box here.
Right, yeah, exactly. Oh my god, there's a woman in this. So after he left, De Niro stopped in the bungalow, entering through the sliding glass patio door as a cokehead does. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that was necessary or he's just rehearsing a role.
Yeah, I don't know.
So he had a few words with Belushi, and then took some of the cocaine that was piled on the living room table and went back to his suite. And this was around 3 a.m. At 8 a.m., a room service waiter delivered wheat toast, jam, and a pot of coffee to Belushi's bungalow. Kathy Smith, the woman whom De Niro had shied away from, signed for the order, had her breakfast, cleaned up the room, especially the drug paraphernalia, checked in on Belushi, who was snoring loudly in bed, and left. A little while later, the music producer Derek Power came knocking on the bungalow door while looking for Miles Copeland, who was the manager of the rock trio The Police, who was himself staying in one of the hotel's bungalows, not in this one. So he was actually knocking on John Belushi's door.
On the wrong door.
Yeah, but nobody answered it. And he figured that out because no one answered it, and then he went and he was like, oh shit, okay, but I was knocking on the wrong door. But yeah, so he never answered it, so who knows what was actually going on inside. At around noon, a taut, spry man was seen walking through the grounds of the hotel, and he walked past the swimming pool, and for some reason he had a typewriter in his arms. And a lot of people were noticing this as, kind of like, oh, why does this dude just walk by with a typewriter? But also a lot of people knew writers lived in the building, and there was, I don't know, it was a lot of celebrities, so there's always random shit coming by, going through by the pool. So nobody really, noticed anything. But then 20 minutes later, a second person came by in a suit, and he was running. So nobody, did anything then, but then paramedics showed up, and they were definitely moving with purpose. And then policemen, and then media started showing up. So people staying at the hotel. I actually got this, most of this information from the Hollywood Reporter, and this was an article that was, they interviewed people that were staying there at the time. So this was actually someone's account. They saw somebody run past them with a typewriter and was like, what the fuck? What is going on? So finally, one of the sunbathers walks into the lobby, which was, super packed, which unusually packed, I guess. And they, asked what was going on, and they were told there has been a slight disturbance. But apparently John Belushi had been discovered in a state of unconsciousness by the man with the typewriter. That was actually his personal trainer and bodyguard, Bill Wallace. Wallace performed CPR on Belushi, was not able to rouse him. And because it was Hollywood, agents mattered more than the cops. So Wallace phoned his manager, Brillstein, whose offices were just down Sunset Boulevard. So he was able to get there pretty much right away. In quotes, Wallace said, "I'm having trouble waking John up." Brillstein thought Belushi might just be playing possum to avoid a meeting he had that day with Paramount executives, which is funny because we know that him and Paramount didn't get along. So he told Wallace that he would just send someone over, thinking it wasn't, real. Wallace called again a few minutes later in a more stressed voice, and he said, "There's something really wrong with John." And Brillstein knew, this he meant something serious. So he told him, call paramedics, get him over there. And this was minutes later after discovering him. Wow. So they definitely didn't call paramedics in time. Fucking Hollywood, man.
Yeah.
So when he got inside the bungalow, he found Wallace crying, still trying to perform mouth to mouth on Belushi, and he's screaming, "Get out of here! John's dead!" And immediately an ambulance arrives. EMTs assess the comedian's state. They didn't even try to defibrillate him. He was definitely already gone. They called for the medical examiner, but they saw the needle marks on Belushi's arms, and they pretty much knew right away that he had died of an overdose. Yeah, it was really, really sad. Brillstein left the office and drove to Cedars-Sinai, where he assumed Belushi would be brought for treatment. He warned the staff that a major star had suffered an accident and was on his way and would require immediate care and, above all, privacy. And then he waited for news, which was painfully long in coming. He paced and smoked, his mind racing. He imagined that Belushi didn't need to come into the ER, and that he was taken to another hospital. But he just really wanted to avoid the news. He thought, if I just get everything ready, he'll arrive and we'll get him back to normal. But then the call came, and he got the horrible news that John Belushi was dead. He immediately called Dan Aykroyd and told him what had happened, and apparently it was no sugarcoating, just point blank, just told him right away, because he knew that the story was ready to break. that because media found out about it right away, you know, like he didn't want his wife Judy to find out about it through the papers or television or whatever. So he wanted to make sure Dan Aykroyd called Judy to make sure that she had that story. And another weird thing that people don't realize, when Belushi died, his next door neighbor was Tony Randall, and he was living right next door, and he didn't hear any of this commotion. I guess I don't know if he was still asleep during the whole time, but he came out when the coroner's wagon was just leaving, and then they told him what happened, and he was just like, "What the what?" Like that's that. I would probably switch.
Oh, you mean like his neighbor in the hotel?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, he was there unfortunately, while Belushi passed away. Yeah. It was interesting reading this article too, because they talk about the 80s being the pop-up of ghost tours. I don't know what exactly it was in the 80s. Was the Satanic Panic? Was that 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's 80s, yeah.
I feel like there was definitely an uptick in ghost stories
and shows,
but
too.
Also shows and movies. Horror movies were huge
Sure,
in the 80s.
Poltergeist.
Yeah.
There's
there's
Ghostbusters and all that stuff. Yeah.
Tons of interest, obviously, in ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. There was sweet shit. There was
Amityville Horror.
That's true. Yeah. It's so. They were kind of, I don't know, the article kind of didn't look too kindly on ghost tours, but which was kind of hilarious that we're doing this.
Those bastards.
All right, yeah. They called them ghoul tours, but apparently that they noticed that in the 80s people started stopping. There would be mostly like vans and tour buses or whatever would stop right outside to get a glimpse of the naughty hotel where John Belushi died. But yeah, it really is pretty much impossible to get inside. There's one entrance, or there's two entrances. There's like a garage valet area, but there's people there all the time, so it's a beautiful, really beautiful spot though. A lot of celebrities have stayed there. Like I said, some notable ones that I wanted to mention was Britney Spears stayed there in 2007. This was during her public meltdown phase. She was actually temporarily banned from the chateau for smearing her face with food, disgusting fellow diners.
Yeah. Poor Britney.
Right. So she was, but it's interesting that like the place where you can hide was still like, nah, you can't do that here.
Right.
Yeah.
Do that in your room. On January 23rd, 2004, photographer Helmut Newton, who lived at the hotel at the time, lost control of his Cadillac and crashed into the driveway wall. He was actually killed.
Really? From that?
Yeah, which is, I mean, when you think about like when Dale Earnhardt passed away, that was a very minor crash.
But he was on a racetrack.
Yeah, that's
in the
true.
Parking lot.
Yeah, but this is a photographer at a place where you get to be an idiot, so who knows what he was doing.
Yeah, sure.
No disrespect.
That's crazy.
No disrespect. Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, I don't know how I say that without. Howard Hughes would supposedly spy on women at the chateau pool using prism binoculars, which I had
Good old Howard.
I had to mention just because Howard Hughes is a weirdo, but also prism binoculars.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm just testing these out. I'm an inventor. I got a plane made of wood.
So weird.
There is a commonly denied and non-denied story that Benicio del Toro and Scarlett Johansson hooked up in the elevator at the Chateau Marmont in 2004. Lindsay Lohan shacked up at the Chateau in the midst of her first drunk driving scandal. I had to put that just because it said first.
Wasn't she
scandal.
Banned from the Beverly Hills Hotel?
That's right,
because she never paid, and she lived there for 3 months.
That was the Roosevelt.
Oh, is it the Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was in my tour spiel. I remember. Yeah. She never paid her the rest of her bill. I used to say like, oh, she's not the only ghost.
Because she ghosted the rose.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's I say it much better on the tour, I promise.
Yeah.
In 1955, James Dean supposedly jumped through a window to audition for Rebel Without a Cause. Director Nicholas Ray, who lived in a bungalow at the time, was actually having an affair with underage Natalie Wood there.
Oh.
Who we know Natalie Wood did not have a...
We should do a story on Natalie Wood, too.
There's also a story about Jim Morrison of The Doors. He was having a rough time getting out of the building, is what they label it as. But he supposedly jumped off either the roof or a terrace of some kind. But apparently it was really high up, and this was like from a drain pipe. And no one knows really why he did it, like if he was just trying to avoid press or something. But this is kind of a place like where you're safe to kind of like go in and out, So most people think he was just high. But apparently he fell like 3 floors and he got up and walked it off. And somebody said that must have been the 8th of his 9 lives. But yeah, it was a really, really interesting place. The hauntings, I guess, in that area mostly refer to John Belushi. The most famous one actually comes from the Travel Channel, and this was supposedly one that's been repeated. They say the staff has reported other families approaching John Belushi, or I guess hanging out with him. But the story goes that a family was staying there for a little while in the 90s, and their son was developed an imaginary friend, and he was always laughing with him, and he called his friend the Laughing Man. And no one really thought anything of it until they were actually flipping through a book that was like a coffee table book in the lobby. Mm-hmm. And as they're flipping through it, the kid like stops her and she's like, "Oh, Mom, it's the funny man. It's the funny man." And that was John Belushi in the picture. So yeah, a lot of people say that they were staying in the same bungalow as he was, and that's what they reported. However, a lot of the research that I found on the Chateau Marmont is they kind of don't reveal that information anymore. Like people have called to stay there specifically in his room, and that's not something they do.
They do.
Unlike, so they don't promote it like the Janis place.
Not at all. Even if you specifically request it, Michael Jean Baptiste, the famous artist in the 80s, wanted to stay there because he wanted to, have this like connection or whatever, and they actually did not allow it.
I wonder if they've changed the numbers on the bungalows too.
That's true too. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I never was able to. That number of the bungalow isn't on here. I just know that he stayed in 69 first, then 54, then he moved. So yeah, who really knows for sure? Or maybe it's out there and I just didn't get that one.
Awesome. Well, good.
Tony Randall knows.
Tony Randall, yeah, right.
Ask him.
We'll just ask him.
Man,
well, good story.
But yeah, that's John Belushi and the Chateau Marmont. Yeah, that's a place we should try and stay someday.
I can't afford the Chateau Marmont. I can't
apparently
even afford...
Apparently it's not that expensive.
Oh, okay.
It's like expensive because of where it is, but it's not like you wouldn't expect it. You'd expect it to be like, $1,000 a night or something,
Yeah.
Apparently it's not that great of a place. It's like a nice place, but it's like Hollywood, a lot of places don't really get remodeled because then it takes away the classic look, But in one of the articles that I read, when they initially released it, I can't remember what newspaper it was, but they described it as a dank, vapid hotel, blah blah blah, and the owners of the hotel sued, and they won. For defamation, because they were saying like it's not a shitty hotel,
Yeah.
Like where he was staying looked shitty because he treated it like shit, and it looked that way because he was, that was like the Howard Hughes thing, like it was filthy as fuck, so they had to actually redact that, which is interesting, but yeah, it's not. They say that it's not like a place that's super ritzy, it's not like polished gold and marble and all this other shit. It's just like a Hollywood hideout. Yeah,
you were saying it was the okayest hotel in Hollywood.
That's funny, yeah, right, yeah. Robert De Niro said that he stayed there because it reminded him of New York, and there was a high rise where he could kind of become invisible, which is interesting because Hollywood's not high up. Hollywood's not. We
have tall buildings.
We do, but most of that's like downtown, and like we're pretty spread out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But
very cool.
That's the story.
Nice. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Nice. So what's on the table?
What's for next week?
Menu?
So, Patrick, I want you to tell us about the life and death of Sharon Tate. Jameson, I want you to tell us about the Wonderland murders.
Wonderland murders, okay.
Yeah. Have you heard of that story?
I have. I know the movie came out about 10 years ago about it.
Yeah.
I've
never seen it, but yeah. But yeah, please tell us about the Wonderland murders. And then I am going to tell you a story that's not scary, but definitely kind of an insight into Hollywood and a particular era of Hollywood. I'm going to tell you guys about the Source family.
The Source family?
Yep.
Okay.
That's all you get to know, because I'm going to tell you next week.
Yeah, I don't know. Yep. I've never heard anything about that.
Yeah. It was a documentary on them that I had watched a couple of years ago, and it's definitely interesting. Oh God, I'm gonna shut up because I was about to give away too much. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it's been a great night, guys. Thanks for the cool stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Just say your little outro. Can I say it? I want to say it.
Do it, yeah.
Where is it? What is it? Outro. Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast, is the collective work of the owners and employees of Hollywood's Haunted Tours and is available on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, like, and share, because sharing is scaring. For more information on Hollywood's Haunted, visit our website at hollywoodshaunted.com. Yeah!
Good episode. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.